Hello everyone, my name is Davik and thank you so much for tuning in to the video. Today, I want to start a new series where I talk about some tips that I have for getting your first engineering internship. And yeah, I think this series could be pretty useful to a lot of people. I know I get a lot of messages personally from first years trying to ask me, some tips that I have for them. So I wanted to put this in a video format to hopefully help out as many people as possible. So this first video is just going to be resume tips that I have. And, of course, these are based on my own personal experience. This by no means guarantees you a job, but hopefully it can help you out. And with that said, let's begin. So the first tip that I have is don't focus on how your resume looks aesthetically. Focus more on how easy it is to find content on the page. Because more often than not, if you can easily find content on the page, your resume will look fine. Putting a fancy template isn't really what's going to get you through the door. It's going to be how easily recruiters can parse through your resume to get the relevant information that will. And so that's why it becomes really important to make sure that you're choosing a design that allows you to do that. Most successful resumes that I've seen, including my own, are usually broken down into sections like skills, work experience, projects and awards, something along those lines, so a recruiter can easily see what information you have on your resume and go straight to those sections that are relevant to them. And so I would definitely recommend adopting a similar type of resume style. A great resource to do that is Resumake, and I'll link it in the bio, but it's completely free, and in 10 to 15 minutes you'll have a great looking resume that you can start working on, and I think follows that style that I mentioned previously. The only caveat with that is that because it is in latex, you're gonna have to download the file in order to make any big changes to that template. But other than that, I think it's a really great resource and can really help you out with that first resume. The second tip that I have is your resume should only be 1 page long, and this is really a golden rule. Especially when you're first starting off, you probably don't have enough experience to justify a 1-page resume, and even if you do have a lot of experience, more often than not, unless you've been in industry for a good long time, you should not have a 2-page resume. Even myself, as a 7-time intern, I still only have a 1-page resume because at the end of the day, that second page has to be justified, and it takes a lot of working experience to make that second page justified. More often than not, recruiters will just throw out your resume if it's more than 1 page. And as somebody who has done hiring at companies before, I can tell you it is very annoying when somebody decides to make a 2 or 3-page resume. And it really does lower your chances in getting the job because nobody's going to go through all that information. So my third tip, and this is especially for software engineering interns, I would say put your skills at the top of your resume. So usually how the section works is that you have your frameworks and languages, and then you just list them out on the top of your resume. And the reason that works is because it makes it easy for a recruiter to sort of check off the boxes as that's what they're trying to do. For example, if you're applying to a front-end development position, and in your frameworks, you have React, Bootstrap, and in your languages, you have JavaScript, HTML, CSS, etc. It can make it a lot easier for the recruiter to sort of check off those boxes that most front-end developers are going to need and go into your resume's experience knowing that you have that experience somewhere in there. In some cases, it might even work out where they see those relevant frameworks and they pass your resume on to the second stage of screening or perhaps an interview. No matter what the case is, I definitely do believe it makes it a lot easier for recruiters who are going through resumes, and I definitely recommend doing it in your resume, especially if you're going for software engineering internships. Now, I understand that a lot of you might not have that experience already on your resume because you're coming in new, so try sort of finding a field that you're interested in, and it doesn't have to be what you're going to do for the rest of your life, but it sort of at least gives you a guideline, and then try finding relevant frameworks and languages to throw on there. So, if you're interested in front end, then look at React, look at Bootstrap, look at these frameworks. If you're interested in data science, play around with Python, with different libraries like Pandas, NLP libraries like NLTK, etc. There's a lot of stuff you can do to at least build that experience and then be able to put it on your resume. So make sure that you're playing around with those frameworks so you can get those skills to put in your resume. Another quick thing to add before I move on is also learn how the Git methodology works. That's a really easy thing that you can learn, doesn't take that long, and it's a nice addition to have to your resume because almost all software companies use some method of Git. So definitely that's a really easy one you should learn, and I would definitely recommend learning that as fast as you can when you come in. So my fourth tip is going to take a little bit of explaining, but it's definitely something a lot of people fall into the trap of, and that is show what you did, not what the organization did. And what I mean by that is you have to think about not only about what the company you worked at does, but think about how does that apply to a company that you want to work for. And so sometimes it becomes very easy to talk about more specific things that might be very applicable, obviously, to the company you worked at or in the project that you're doing, but it doesn't really help in the company you're applying to. So sometimes it becomes really important to make it a little more generalized so it can still be applicable to another company. So pretend that you created a shopping app as a project. Well, most people will probably have something along the lines of created a shopping app using Node.js for the back end and React for the front end, which of course it's really nice to have, but you have to think about how it might be relevant to the companies you're applying for. Now, if you're applying to something directly like Amazon, it's going to have direct applications, but if you're applying to somewhere like Lyft or Google, it might not. So instead, I would probably have something more along the lines of, create a mobile application that utilizes Node.js to do real-time updating with an endpoint API, as well as used React to have a cross-platform, modern mobile application user interface that users can easily tap into. Something along those lines, I think, is still more applicable to a company than just saying you created a shopping app using those two technologies. And that's what I'm trying to say. Sometimes it's very easy to talk about specific situations that your app works in. For example, maybe you made a banking app, but will that be as applicable to the companies that you're applying for or the products that you want to work for? Think about how can you make it applicable? How can you shift that experience? And I think that goes a further way. I would definitely suggest putting numbers also in your points. It allows recruiters to have a much better picture about the actual impact that you had for the company. And yeah, I think it goes a very long way. At least I know for myself, when I did put numbers in my resume, I got a lot more internship opportunities. So sometimes you do have to get pretty creative with the numbers because you're not always in the situation where you could say, I have 1 million rows in a MongoDB database and I did data cleansing on all of those. You don't have those situations all the time, but there are still some very nice ways you could be creative by putting percentages, etc. And that doesn't mean lie, but at the same time, just find ways you can quantify the work that you did, even if it doesn't seem as easily quantifiable. So the fifth tip that I have is try to find out if your resume is ATS compatible. And what I mean by that is, beyond just recruiters looking at your resume, a lot of it is now done by machines. So you want to make sure that your resume is compatible with those machines and that the machines can pull out those relevant details from your resume. There's a lot of resources for this, but I know for myself, I end up just finding a careers website that uses Workday because a lot of them do. Or Microsoft Careers is a good resource for that. Just try putting your resume in and seeing what it parses out and making sure that it parses out the right thing. If it doesn't, then you might have to go through and change your template a little bit. But you want to make sure I can at least read the resume because there's some versions of PDF or different document versions that aren't compatible with ATS, so you want to make sure that yours is. So my sixth tip is make sure your resume gets shit on. And what I mean by that is nobody really has a good resume coming into university. So make sure that you're getting as much review and critique on your resume so you can get up to that level. Because honestly, I look back at my first year resume and it was not good, but those review sessions that I went to really helped out. The one caveat with it though is make sure that you also sort of draw a line at a point where, unless it's a very big point that somebody's saying, a lot of times you might see a little bit a conflict between two resume critiques. So at a certain point, you also have to call what you think you're most comfortable with and what will you think will allow you to have the most success. So my seventh tip, and this sort of applies for resumes, but make sure that you're sending your resume everywhere, especially for that first internship. It's really hard to get. And so you want to make sure that you're increasing the opportunities that you have to get working experience, because working experience trumps all. It's very rare you're going to find postings that say, first years are accepted or people without working experience are accepted. So I would just apply everywhere anyway, because you never know what's going to happen. And at the end of the day, for your first internship, most of the time people have to take a risk on you. And so you want to make sure that you're applying everywhere to increase the chances that somebody will. But overall, guys, if you liked the video, maybe give this video a like and subscribe. I'll probably do another video on my tips for interviews as well as my tips for the application process. And I'll probably do another video on top of that on the tips I have specifically for getting an internship at Tesla. That was my previous internship, and definitely a lot of people have asked me about that. So it's probably a good conversation to be had. This channel is going to be talking about tech, internships. I'm going to be doing some other stuff as well, just trying new things out. With that said, I hope this was helpful, and stay tuned for the next one.